We were still little, about 13 or 14 years old, and then there was one terrible incident that everyone, without exception, remembered for the rest of their lives. In general, this is a scary story based on the memories of that day. We lived on the outskirts of the city. Literally, there was a road behind our yard that led past several private houses to the federal highway. Nearby was a coniferous forest belt, which everyone called simply the landing, and on the other side was a once-dug excavation, now flooded with water. Naturally, we often ran to this very landing, first to play robber Cossacks, hide and seek, then we tried smoking there. No one had ever been afraid to enter the forest belt before that terrible story. I don't know what they were doing then, but they stayed there after dark. It was late summer, and it was getting dark early enough. No one was afraid to stay here for a long time, because even though our house was not visible from here, everyone knew that it was worth literally walking 300 meters and you would already come out of the forest belt. I remember that someone made a bonfire out of dry coniferous twigs and fir cones. We all sat around him. At first they chatted, and then they just fell silent and stared at the flames. Gradually, everything became foggy. Our area is low-lying, so this phenomenon is quite common. Almost every morning begins with fog and ends with it. And now we were covered by a dense cloud that only the flames and our small circle could be seen. Suddenly, thick black smoke billowed over the fire, such as happens when burning tires. The only strange thing was that the smoke did not rise up and gradually dissipated in the air, but gathered into some kind of shape. After a while, we realized that the dark haze was taking on the appearance of a human. Then, as if on cue, everyone jumped out of their seats. We ran through the fog, not understanding the direction, until we jumped out onto the road. A scream was heard from the forest plantation. Very strange, not male or female, but rather something in between. It wasn't a cry of despair or a cry of pain, but rather a kind of cry, when one person calls out to another to stop. Except the voice wasn't human at all. The sound alone almost made me scream, and my chest hurt in the middle. We ran home so fast that only our heels sparkled. The next day, all the surrounding courtyards knew about our adventure. Some joked, others scared each other with terrible horror stories about a dead man in the forest, about a goblin, etc. We went back ourselves, along with the rest of the guys, but we didn't find the coals of our own campfire. All the time it seemed that this was the place, but there were no traces of our stay yesterday. Over time, the whole terrible story, if not forgotten, began to be perceived somehow calmly. We all went to the plantation ourselves with the same company, but even though we got older, we unconsciously tried not to go far so that the trees wouldn't completely block out the white light. As for the tragic deaths in this very forest plantation, they have happened. Not to say that often, but once every 2 or 3 years, some drunk could die there. The place was often used to get drunk. After our terrible story, in the winter, one kid from the 4th school hung himself on a fir tree, like because of his parents. And a couple of years ago, they found a dead drug addict. I don't know, maybe this story won't seem scary to someone, but I told you what happened. Perhaps these deaths are coincidences, and not tied to this particular place. Because if it were really cursed, they would die in stacks. There are a lot of people hanging around there. One thing is for sure, we saw something quite clearly that day, and then we heard it.